Hello, how's it going, everyone? I am adjusting my mic still, so only 4 people here. Hopefully a few more people show up. Didn't really publicize this very much, so if you're here, say hello. How you doing? How's it going? Hey, Christopher. Hey, Stuart. Hey, Darshna. How's it going, Patel? Well, that's apparently everybody. Hi. Just thought I would do a stream. I might do... So I'm in Florida at the moment. And I could do a stream. I leave next Sunday. I can do a stream today and maybe one later this week. I'm thinking. Hopefully, I think what I'll do is probably try to schedule that one right after this and maybe give people a little more time to know what's going on. Hopefully, internet-wise, everything is fine. It's so weird. I have this limited, but it's literally going over the limit right now as I'm talking. But it should handle it. And we shouldn't have any issues like I did that the other time. Yeah, I heard it's nice. It hasn't been too bad in Florida, surprisingly, because I hate Florida weather. But it actually has not been too bad. It's been like high of 65, low of 40. So it really hasn't been too bad. All right. More people will show up. Yeah, I'm watching. I figured out how to get my CPU usage and my FPS and all that listed on streaming software I'm using. So I can actually see the data rates and stuff like that. And I know the connection, I'm only using like a third of the upload connection right now. So even if it spikes, it should be fine. So, okay. Let's go. First of all, we got to pick some music that you guys can't hear because I can't play audio through my Mac unless I do some roundabout thing. But that means I get to listen to copyrighted stuff. So this is what I'm going to be listening to. And I'm going to ask you guys what we should edit. So let's start there. The 2 options that I have. Oh. My sound is messed up. There we go. All right. So the 2 options, well, there's more than 2 options, but the 2 that I think I want to try to edit are, let's see if I can find them. It's going to be this particular shot mixed with some amount of some of these other shots. Or some of these shots from the Diamond Beach. Let's see. I've already done some preliminary edits on some of them, but I definitely want to edit them like fully. So this series of shots. And yeah. So if you guys have any suggestions, there's quite a few options in here. So this particular shot, I want to edit with this swirly thing. But as you can tell, the piece of ice actually moved, or my tripod moved or something. So what I'm going to have to do for this one is take this shot and then use the water from this shot. But there's quite a few of these to go through. So yeah. What do you guys think? Which one? What do you want to start with? Ice or landscape. Okay. One for Diamond Beach. I mean, if I have enough time, I'll try to do both, but I know that both are going to be somewhat involved edits. Maybe not super involved, but definitely at least opening in Photoshop and stuff like that. I haven't really picked out which photos here I want to use. Also, you can see my phone down here taking a time lapse. Kind of hilarious. So, landscape, landscape, landscape. Okay. We'll start with the landscape then. Okay. Cool. Let's start there. All right. So the first thing I need to do, I've already gone through and made selections on this. So I have an idea of like which ones are the best from the moment. And then I think what we want to decide is light and how I might want to blend together the particular water. It's entirely possible I don't end up using any of these darker shots. Sorry, excuse me. And I do like a separate, maybe black and white edit for these just because the light isn't as good. As you can tell, the light here is really cool because there's like little hints of it on the water. I think the main shot is probably this one. I think this is probably the best water and light mixed in. So I think it's going to be this one. I'm just looking at elements in the water right now to see if there's anything. Yeah. I'm also looking at the background. Sorry, my throat is definitely giving me trouble. So I like the cloud in this one a lot more. Okay. Just going back and forth, sorry. I'm not really talking about what I'm doing here. I'm just kind of getting an idea of which ones I want to use. So I kind of want to take the cloud from this particular shot. I really like the light on the mountains in this particular shot, but it's zoomed out a little bit more than the other shots, and I don't know if I want to deal with that. I don't know if it's worth it. I think we're going to take this shot, and this shot, and try to blend them. So let's do our preliminary edit. See how we can get it looking before we take it in. Hello? Okay. Do not like the way that looks. Should be a tad warmer, but not that much. Okay. It's amazing, dude. I know I talk about this all the time, but I just love looking at how the light on where it's hitting right here on these waves and just what this does to that. It's like it brightens it all at the same time. I don't know. Sometimes that calibration thing doesn't do much, and then sometimes it just always surprises me. Gonna move down our sharpening a bit. Sometimes I'm probably not going to talk a lot because this is going to be more of an involved edit, and I can't talk literally the whole time. So just know that I will try to talk when I'm thinking through things as best as I can. This looks a little too warm. Let's just bring it back to where it started. I think this is pretty good. Preliminary. Just a base edit there. Then we want to apply it to this one. Just pasting that. And I'm also going to apply it to this one. Now I'm really just focused on these clouds though. So that's all I really care about from this particular photo. I'm not going to, normally I don't add dehaze until the last part, but I'm just trying to make those clouds pop just a little bit more. I'm going to bring up the shadows so I have a little bit easier time blending. I'm also going to bring up the warmth a bit. Not sure if it's going to be worth it for these clouds. They're not like anything spectacular. Like this was what was happening on the opposite end, but might be worth blending together. I don't think this is going to be too much trouble. Hey, Master Wolf. 9 months. It's funny. I'm actually sitting in his house right now, so it's a little not 9 months. But what else would I expect from him? Okay. So I'm trying to decide if I want to do a dark exposure or a bright exposure now and take it in as well when I take this particular photo in. And I'm not entirely sure. Maybe I'll just do it all in Photoshop. I think that's probably what we'll do. So normally if you watch my stuff, my workflow is to make a virtual copy of this and create a darker exposure and a brighter exposure and blend those together. But I always say that you can just do them straight into Photoshop, which is probably what we'll do. So let's take these into Photoshop. I got to resize Photoshop, so I'm going to open these as layers in Photoshop and resize it. Hope everyone's having a good day. No, it's Monday, so. Oh, I think I dropped some frames there. It's weird because I'm only at like 15% CPU. But my FPS definitely dropped for sure. Well, it didn't drop any frames, so whatever. Okay. Resizing this. All right. Okay. So this is our main photo. This is a photo we might use some of the, kind of like the way the rock looks back here in this particular photo compared to this one. So might do something with that. Not entirely sure. And try to use the cloud from this. So the first thing we're going to want to do is align these because that one is a little bit more zoomed out than the other and see if it actually aligns. If it's too complicated, like the align doesn't work very well, I'm not entirely sure that particular cloud is going to be worth it, but let's take a look. There's a little shift, so I might have to move it around a bit, but we'll see. I'm not worried about the cloud at the moment. I'm going to do that last. So I think the biggest thing here is trying to decide what I want to use from this particular shot and what I want to use from this shot. I'm not sure there's a whole lot in this other shot that's, like I like some of the light that's right here. Oh, I have them all selected, that's why. So right now I'm using a shortcut to turn on and off that layer to go back and forth. If you ever want to add that shortcut, it's in your preferences, edit, keyboard shortcuts, just so you know. And then under layer, I use two shortcuts a lot. I use disable, enable the layer and disable and enable the mask. If you want to know how to do those, you can just ask in the chat and I'll show you. Some of you might already know though. Okay. I know it's monotonous that I'm going back and forth between these to look at these, but I'm just trying to get a good idea if there's anything. I don't know if there's enough. I don't know if there's enough to warrant blending this in. I really like this. I think that's the biggest thing. Let's see if we can blend that in easy. So we're gonna add a mask, and I'm not gonna add any. That is not the type of brush we want. I'm not gonna add any luminosity or anything. We're just gonna try to paint in. Nope, not that way. And see how we can get it to look naturally. Welcome back, Stuart. 8 months. Well, it's kind of hard to compete with somebody that knew about the membership as I was testing it out. So, okay, so I don't think this is going to be too hard to blend together. The question is it worth it, right? So, is that little detail of that rock worth it? I think it is. I think it is. Okay, let's do it. This is going to be a lot of trial and error, so I'm basically just going to paint this in of what I want and then fix all the spots that don't look natural. So what I could do is just paint this entire part here. Like this. We're just going to use basically I'm using this little movement of water right here as where I'm painting in and blending them together. Because you can tell that movement is actually kind of in both of the photos, so it's easier to blend through right there. I kind of like this light that's right here though, so let's blend that back in. And again, because the water is moving like this, it's really easy to blend these layers together, especially right there. So that's what I blended in so far. Should probably blend in that too. A little bit of a moment back there. It's kind of cool. But is it too busy? I mean, that's pretty busy too, so. No, kind of like it. Okay. Let's take a look at this blend. So I'm going to keep turning this layer on and off, and then I'm going to turn the mask on and off. That's why I have these two shortcuts, to try to see if it looks unnatural. And it kind of looks unnatural right here. So what I'm going to do is lower my opacity to 50, and then come through and just blend in a little bit more there. And you can see what's really interesting about the blend now is here's this photo without any blending. And there's a line of light right here. And then here's this photo, and there's a line of light right here. So if I just blend in that line of light right here, it looks pretty natural coming in right there. And I kind of like the way it looks. I think that's looking pretty good. I'm going to turn the mask on and off. Mask off. Layer on and off. Okay, I need to fix a little bit right here. Just add that in a little stronger. Maybe not so much. I think that looks pretty good. Mask on and off. This could be a little bit better. Right there. Also, I'm using a very soft brush, so 0% hardness. Looks pretty good. Now I need to look right here. And I think that this blend right here is looking perfectly fine. I don't see anything that's really sticking out to me that's not natural. I actually like the way we added in this part to make this bigger. Small detail, but it's really nice. Yeah. I think that's looking good. I don't see any more mistakes. I'm turning that mask on and off. Now I'm turning the layer on and off. I think that's good. So this is what we did. We masked in that bottom layer to add in a little bit more detail on this rock right here, make it a little less busy. And we've also touched some light here, which is kind of nice. I'm looking for any other spots I might want to include, but I think that's pretty much it. I don't think there's really any of these waves here that I want to include. I like the way that these look all on their own. Do we want to add that little wave back there? Sure, let's do that since we have it here. Let me bring my opacity back to 100. Just add that in. Nice. Those little details don't matter all that much, but if I'm going to take the time to do it, I might as well just do it. Okay. I think that looks pretty good. Okay. So I'm going to group these together, and then we're going to take a look at this sky. Does anyone know if you can use the sky replacement tool with a photo that's in the project? So obviously I know you can use the sky replacement tool and go find the photo, but can I just use the sky replacement tool to use this photo, my own photo that's in the project already? Does anyone know? Oh, thanks, Ethan. Appreciate it. Well, let's try it. So the thing is, I can come in here and create a mask and just paint in this pretty easily, as you can tell. But what's going to happen is it's going to darken that edge here. Well, you know, to be honest, maybe I just like that. I kind of like this cloud over here, though. How do I get both? Can I use both? Sweet. Well, that wasn't too hard. Sometimes things just kind of come together. Cool. Well, let's make sure it looks right. Make sure I don't have any red over here. And basically, I just use this little blue section here to blend those two together. And this just added a tiny bit of atmosphere here that I think is important. Otherwise, this top left corner is a little boring. I mean, obviously, I can't change the weather. That would be nice if I could. So right now, I'm going to look at this edge here. It moves it a little bit, but I'm actually okay with that. I kind of like that light. Kind of like how it has a more red hue here on these peaks and the more of a golden hue here as the sun sets. I think that's looking pretty good. So obviously you can tell I need to crop the image. Can do that in a second. Yeah, this is I haven't done any exposure blending, no. All I've done is blended in different parts of the image. I'm about to exposure blend now. Okay, so let's crop it. Okay. I might have to redo that one. Probably gonna have. Usually this thing doesn't detect perfectly. I have to check everything. Yeah. Whoop. Has anyone noticed any drop frames, any issues on the stream? I actually think it's probably fine. I haven't gotten a single issue. I think it was my internet connection last time. There's too many people there. So I'm checking every corner here to make sure that I've cropped down to not have a line of pixels. Yeah. Okay. So this is our image. We are going to exposure blend. We don't really have to do a whole lot here, to be honest. I mean, a lot of the image has, because of the way the light was, is already dark where it should be and bright where it should be, but we can definitely make it a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is, oh, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm just going to add a curves layer. We're just going to darken the whole image. Something like, probably like this. And then we're going to luminosity mask. Actually, I'm going to turn off this layer and then make the mask. Gives us a little more range because then everything isn't dark. I think I'm going to do a masks 2 first, and we're going to focus on some of these waves. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I know that I'm not explaining everything that I'm doing. I'm using TK8's beta panel that works with the M1 version of Mac. Now I'm going to enable this and then go into my blanking. I'm going to my mask here. And I'm going to grab my Wacom tablet, and I got to get that plugged in. I've got to figure out how I'm going to plug it in because I'm using all my ports. Okay. Okay, there we go. Should be good. Oh. I plugged it into the computer, but I forgot to plug it into the actual pad. I was like, huh. It's not working. Now it should be good. All right. Wacom tablet, plugged in. Pressure sensitivity needs to be turned on, which is this selection. We're going to bring our opacity down to about 45, 40, and start paying with black a little bit. Just to brighten up some of these spots here. I've got a pretty big brush. I'm just kind of using that luminosity mask to do all the work here. So you can't really tell what I'm doing. It's very hard to see, but if I turn the mask on and off, you can already tell I've brightened the spot a little bit. We definitely want to come in here to some of the rocks, but we're going to have to brighten those up later. Just kind of painting in, using that mask. Again, it's kind of hard to see. Honestly, it's not, I actually don't like what it's doing. Because I kind of like the way the light looks here. And I feel like it's just brightening everything rather than the spots that I really want it to hit. So we are actually going to undo everything I just did. Because I am not in love with that. And let's start over. So I'm going to turn this back off. I think what we're going to do is actually start with the darks and try to work on brightening some of those up first, and then add some light in. Painting with black is on the mask. When you paint with black, it just shows through whatever the layer is when you're using a mask. When you paint with white, it shows the layer that you have. So, for example, when you have a mask, so for example, this was my mask where all the red stuff is that you can see. Painting with black shows through. Painting with white leaves the layer, doesn't show through, basically. That's really it. So painting with white and black on a mask is not, doesn't actually mean the colors, it just means what shows through with the layer that's underneath it. Black will show through and white will not. Okay. back to selecting this mask. Let's use I think we're going to start with darks 2. Yeah, darks 2 is probably enough not to hit a lot of those waves. And we definitely need to brighten up these sections. I'm actually going to increase my opacity just a little bit more. And we're just going to go through a pretty big brush here. I don't want these to be bright. That's not what I'm trying to do here, but I want you to be able to see the detail. I think that's what's important. It's just being able to see the detail in those sections. And we definitely want to brighten up this mountain here, for sure. It does not need to be that dark. Thankfully, it's not really hitting any of those clouds there because I have that darks 2 mask selected. And then this is the mask. This is what we just did. It's very subtle, but it is there. And now we get a little bit more detail out of all these sections here that were darkened, as you can tell. I think it's looking just a little bit better. You kind of have to build on step by step. It's not a one-time thing. That's kind of the point of masking, is so that, or luminosity masking specifically, is that you're not just using sliders to adjust the contrast. You're getting a little bit more out of it. So I'm looking at sections like right here. Maybe I brightened up this spot a little bit too much. So what I'm actually going to do is do one more pass of brightening. So one big swoop here, like that. And then I'm going to come in and darken a few of the spots that I think should be darker with a smaller. So I'm switching back to white. So this little section should be darker. It's in shadow. This is not getting hit by as much light. It's not as reflective. I definitely think this should be a little bit brighter for sure. Let's brighten that up. So I switch I'm pressing X to go back and forth between black and white. And I'm going to kind of go do that through this whole image here. That's looking fine in terms of brightness. This should be darker since those waves are blocking the sun there. This little section should be a little bit darker right here because it is not getting hit by as much light. This little section doesn't need to be as bright as it is. So this little section is getting hit by light, but because it's on the edge of the frame, I don't want it to be as bright as it is. So we're going to darken that. We're actually just going to darken a lot of this section right here as much as I can, where it looks natural. Yeah. So I'm going to get a little more precise here. I'm going to come in and just darken these spots that have shadow and then kind of brighten the spot that has that layer of light there. Now, even though it's on the edge, that little touch of light's not going to hurt anything. It's going to add a little bit more atmosphere to the overall photo. So I'm just darkening these spots that should be dark right here behind the wave and brightening these little hints of light right there. I want to brighten this little spot here, this little spot here, and just go back to darkening these spots that should be a little bit darker. Now these are pretty dark, but I don't want them to have no detail. That's really what I'm aiming for here, is I don't want them to be completely clipped. So I think these are all fine. This should probably be a tad lighter. These little sections should be a little bit brighter as well, because they're getting hit by light, as you can tell. There's little hints of light there. So obviously this spot should be brighter, and this spot should be a little darker since it's not getting hit by light. And I think that that's pretty good. Here's the mask so far. I think I'm going to darken this section. So there's a lot of haze right here, as you can tell. And darkening this little section, because it's really not getting hit by light anyways, is going to help with that. I think we darkened the beach too much, though. So let's go in and fix that. Okay. Like I said, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. Okay. So I think that's good for that mask. Let's brighten up parts of the image that we want to brighten up. So I'm actually going to leave this on and try to hone in on these spots in the waves and see if I can get those a little bit brighter. Let's start over here. Don't want to brighten them too much. I'm going to bring our opacity down a little bit. And again, your mask's already handling some opacity levels, so it's not like I'm painting in and it's immediately becoming the brightest part. It can. The mask is handling a lot of those transitions for me. It's kind of the beauty of the masks. I'm just going to come through and brighten little parts of this. I want to try to brighten little accents over here, but I can't do it with the mask that I currently have selected. But I am going to do that. So this is going to be very subtle. There's not a lot that I'm doing it's going to be difficult for you to see. But I am brightening up some of these spots. Again, it's going to look very similar. It's going to be hard to tell what I'm doing here. This section should be darker. I think this is already pretty bright enough, but definitely want this section to be bright right here. I do not have a schedule, sadly. I could basically, because of my lifestyle of living in the car, having a place to stream with the internet is intermittent and random. So a lot of the times, what I'm going to try to do a little bit better is schedule ahead of time. So if I know that I have a place that I'm going where I can stream, I'm going to try to set up the stream like a week in advance. Obviously, I didn't give a lot of time. I think I scheduled this 2 days ago for people to know that it was happening. But I really can't schedule them because of that, sadly. Okay, I think that's pretty good. I want to brighten some parts of these waves. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create another curves adjustment. And we're just going to use that to brighten the image. But I'm going to inverse the mask. I'm going to come in here. I'm really looking at these little parts of the waves here. And I don't really want to hit these brighter spots, so it's going to be difficult for me. I'm going to have to be careful with how I brush this stuff in, and it's going to have to be pretty light. So we're going to go down to 15%. A lot of the times when you're brightening things, it happens real quick in terms of... So if I just paint in a little bit of white here, even at 15%, you're going to start to notice it pretty quick. Well, maybe 20%. But I just want to brighten up these little spots right here. I can come in and brighten this little spot. Just painting in some light here. Just want to brighten up these spots so they're not so dark. That's the biggest thing. So I know I'm already probably going to have to bring up the shadows just a little bit once I add contrast back into the overall image in Lightroom. That's kind of something I can already tell considering how dark it is right here. But we're going to try to get it as close as possible before having to do that. No, I fly back to where my car is parked in Denver, and then for Christmas, I'm going to be in Vegas. So my plan is to just slowly drive from Denver to Vegas over the next 3 weeks. And then I have some friends visiting in Vegas after Christmas for New Year's. So we're all hanging out there for like 5 days. It's pretty stoked. And then after that, I don't have any plans. I might go to California. I might stay in Vegas for like another week to just be with my family because I haven't really seen them during COVID very much. I have 2 aunts out there and 2 cousins. Both cousins are 13 and 15. And they're actually really cool just because even though I'm more than double their age, we get to talk about the same hobbies. Like they watch Twitch streamers and stuff like that. So it's cool to be around them, and I haven't been able to be near them the last couple of years because of COVID. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Okay. I know it's hard to see what I'm doing, but I'm just brightening up some of these brighter spots here. Very small. So if I turn this layer on and off, you can see what I've done there to just kind of brighten up that area a little bit better. So, yeah, it's looking pretty good. I think overall, things are looking good. I don't know if there's anything else I want to do to the image. I feel like the mountains should be a bit brighter, to be honest. And we can use this layer to do that. So let's do that. We're going to go in here and select a darks 1, I think. Yeah, that should work. Darks 1. Come in here. Definitely going to need a higher opacity. And I'm just going to paint in with some big brush strokes here so I don't really have to worry too much about how it blends with the sky. Not that big. Make it a little smaller here. Just want to brighten this up a little bit more. Turn that on and off. Yeah. I might have to get a little more precise in here, but for time's sake, I think that's pretty good. Okay. Let's take a look at the edges. They look fine. Yeah. This section is definitely too dark, but we can fix that in Lightroom easily, or balance it pretty easily. It's kind of where I need it to be. I think I'm going to hit save, and we're going to do some Lightroom adjustments and then go from there. Hey Tim, how's it going? While that is saving, you guys can see right there in the corner, that is my 2022 calendar. If you're interested in a calendar, the link is down below, I hope. I think I put it there. And if you're a member of my channel, there's a 20% discount. So you could literally sign up to be a member and then save more money on the calendar than the actual membership cost for 1 month. All that stuff is linked down below. If you want to support me, if you want to just check it out, that'd be great. Thanks for tuning in. Hope everyone's having a good day. Got to move this pen thingy out of the way. Let's do that. And do a little edit on this. So I always try to add some contrast, but I already knew I was going to need to bring up the shadows a little bit here. Nothing is clipping, so that's fantastic. But it is pretty dark there. We're definitely going to add some dehaze, and I know I'm going to have to remove some blue in the image. Yeah, let's do that. This is going to counteract that blue saturation that I did earlier. And let's add some sharpening back in. I have my hand on the wrong spot. Holding Alt to see what it's actually sharpening with this mask. I think this is probably pretty good. Let's go to 10. I don't want it to really sharpen these areas too much. Otherwise, it just makes them look a little muddy. And they don't really need to be sharpened. All right. I think I'm going to take down some clarity. I haven't entirely decided here. I'm looking at, specifically I'm looking at the waves here, these sections mainly. Kind of like maybe -5. Very subtle. And let's crop it a little bit. I think this needs to be... Although I do think that the original composition is pretty strong on its own. I don't really need to do a whole lot crop-wise. The problem is if I move this, I lose this balance in the image. I think I would have to do this if I wanted to balance it better. But then I lose a lot of the detail in the skies. So I think I want to leave this here and probably crop. I don't know. I just think the balance is pretty strong as the original image. Maybe with just a little bit off the right. Nope. See, there's so much weight right here, right in this section, that I just, anything I crop off here is just not going to look great. I think if I bring up just a little bit, bring in just a little bit. Trying to balance that correctly. No, this has got to come back down. Got to come back down more. Okay. I didn't change much there, but super subtle crop. I think the original composition is just pretty strong that you can't really crop out much. I'm not in love. I feel like it's not done. It's always funny to see what the white balance would automatically be after you've done your edits. I feel like this image is okay, but I feel like it's missing something. I don't really know what that is. Let's use the new sky selection mask. It's probably going to do a really good job considering how easy this one is. You can see that. I'm going to remove some highlights there. Actually, before we do that, let's add a little more 𝐒𝐤𝐤𝐚𝐥𝐬 to the sky. It's going to add some micro contrast to it and darken it. Then we can add a little bit, subtract a little bit of highlights. Maybe warm it up a little bit. Just a little. That's going to remove some of that blue from the 𝐒𝐤𝐤𝐴𝐵𝐻. Still need to bring up the shadows a little. Yeah, I think this is pretty close, but I don't know. I just feel like it's missing something. There's not enough drama in the sky, I think, but obviously I can't control that. This is going to be one I have to come back to and decide what it's missing. I think overall, it's pretty good. Simple. One, pretty much, I mean, obviously I blended some other shots, but it's pretty much one exposure. I think I took these and selected them to possibly do a black and white edit. Just out of curiosity. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm going to have to come back to this one. Yeah, balancing these rocks to be correct. Thankfully, just bringing up the shadows and stuff does a lot. I do think they're too dark. I think they need to be somewhere probably around here, to where they still look dark, but I can, if I focus in on them, I can really see the details slightly. I think something like that is probably closer to what it should be. I just feel like it's probably missing an element, but sometimes that's photography. Okay, let's move on to the Diamond Beach. I think that's a good place to stop on this. So I could just keep pushing it and keep trying things, but a lot of the times what I'll do for my editing process is I will do an edit like we just did and then let it sit there. Because a lot of the times I'll just feel like, what else does it need? Or maybe this is just the image and I have to accept it. And then I decide, well, if I'm gonna post it or not. But this is definitely one where like we just did that edit. I'm just going to let it sit there and I'm going to go back to it and say, oh, it's better than I thought. Because a lot of the times I'll work on a photo and go back to it like a week later and realize, wait, I took this. This is way better than I remember it being. Or it's way worse than I remember being. So. Adding a person. Totally fine. I've done it a few times. Rarely. I usually don't shoot myself. I think it's one of those things where it's tough, right? Because I think if I'm adding a person for a reason, by that I mean like for a reason for landscape photography, such as showing scale or having a person in there as a kind of the subject, but it's really still about the landscape. But they add an element in there that really just makes or breaks the image. It makes sense to me. The problem is balancing that mentality with balancing, I want to put a person here because it's going to look better for social media, is tough, right? So the way I try to think about it is, if I printed this image for a wall, does having a person in it make sense? In the sense that if I took this image here, I have an example. Actually, I have a great example of one of the only images I have with a person in it. Let me see if I can find it. Let's see. So, okay. Let's go back. So this particular image, in my opinion, just would not work without a person. But I also think about this image and I think if I printed this image, it needs to have the person in there, but it's not about the person. I'm not showing off some landscape or some scene that shows off like, oh, this person is in this place. And I know that's weird. It's tough to articulate in terms of what I'm talking about. But a lot of the times I'll ask myself, am I taking a shot so that I'm in it to show that I'm in a cool background, or am I taking a shot because I add something to the actual image? I hope that makes sense. So very rarely do I shoot, like have me or have someone in a shot. But a lot of the times when I do, I think about, if I took this shot, would someone buy this and put it on their wall even with a person in it, right? Because I think a lot of the times people, influencers, social media, and that kind of thing, almost all of the people have moved to having them in all their shots. But I think who would want to buy any of these images that just have you as the subject of the shot, even though they're in cool landscapes, cool scenes, stuff like that. So I think it's that balance that's really important. So if you're including someone, even though, just have to make sure, for me personally, that the shot is not about them. It's just about their element of being in the shot, whether it's to show scale or create subject in the image, even though it's not like about that particular person. So I hope that answers your question. I'm particular about it because, again, I want to always think about, are the shots that I'm taking things that people would purchase, people would have on their own walls, or would I have on my own wall? And I wouldn't have a bunch of photos of myself in cool places on my wall. It just doesn't excite me. So hope that answers that question. All right. Diamond Beach. Let's see. I already have one image set up. I've done some preliminary edits on these before taking them to Photoshop to see what they'll look like. So I think we're going to end up editing this particular moment. Yeah, I think there's a time and place for having people in your photos. Mads does it a lot. Mads has a ton of photos with himself in it to show scale. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I just don't gravitate towards doing it unless it feels like it makes the photo. Like if you need the person in there to really bring home a center point of the image. So we're going to edit this photo, and I already have my bright and dark exposure that we're going to do, I think. Honestly, these photos don't need a whole lot. They're a little bit on the dark side. But I know that this, I actually don't know which moment is the best. I actually like the water in this one a lot. I like the rocks in this one. So let's just start with one. We're just going to open both of these. Photoshop, I might lag a little bit here. Seems my FPS drops when I open images in Photoshop. Didn't do it that time, so that's good. Okay. So, we're going to start with our dark image. Going to add a mask. I need to plug my Wacom back in. I probably didn't need to fully unplug it, but... How's everyone doing? Thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. Okay. So, yeah. Blending this. Shouldn't be too hard. We're using the same exact image. So these are just two images brightened and darkened. Sorry, one image brightened and darkened to blend together. So I don't have to worry about any blending issues. I'm just going to get a little more creative control over how I can paint in the light where I want it. So I think we're going to turn this layer off. Going to come in here, probably do one or two. Let's start with two. No. Let's start with one, not that one. Brighten up the whole image and then paint it a little bit more light using brights too. I think that's what we're going to do. Like I said, I'm going to try to talk as much as I can, but sometimes it is difficult. Okay. I'm going to bring this down. Like I said, painting in brightness is very sensitive, so I'm going to just brighten up this whole image just a little bit. Well, the spots that should be bright. So this is what I've already done. And then we're going to brighten up the spots that should be even brighter. I'm actually going to brighten up the sky a little bit. Don't want it to be as gray as it is. I'm just lightly painting. I think this spot's probably a little too bright. Oops. Yeah, okay. That's good for that mask. I'm going to turn this layer back off. We're going to do brights too, lights too, whatever you want to call them. And can probably bring up the opacity a little bit more now. We're just going to paint in these bright spots that should be bright. We're going to want to focus in on the piece of ice here. Just brighten up all of that spots in here that are already pretty bright. And that mask is just going to help pick out the spots that are already bright. Like right here. What I have to worry about is these two dark spots up here getting too dark to where it just looks unnatural. That's kind of what I'm worried about here. No, I would not do that. I particularly don't have any gravitas towards an image that only has one colored subject unless I did it in camera. Unless it was something where like you can barely tell the image has color, and there's something in the image that is super colorful. Like it's a gray day and everything looks gray and everything looks very absent of color, and there's one particular thing that's colorful. I would do it then, but I would never do an edit where I black and white everything and then only kept one part in color. It's not something I would enjoy. It was something I used to do when I first started photography. There's nothing wrong with it if that's what you want to do. It's just not something I particularly want to do. Okay, I think this blend is already pretty close to done for what I want it to be. I need to try to brighten up these darker spots though, for sure. So let's try to do that. I'm going to use this one to give us a little bit more selection on the bright. It's gonna be tough. I never use the midtones things because it just basically selects everything. Well, let's try to use this mask a little bit because I do want to brighten the darks down there a little bit. Smaller brush here. I gotta be careful because if I keep doing this, there's gonna be a halo right here. That's kind of what I'm trying to prevent. So I don't need to do a whole lot in terms of this little section, but I need to do something. Let's just get really precise in here. Okay. Then I'm going to brighten up these rocks down here a little bit. Just a little bit, so you can kind of see some of that detail where these rocks are. Okay. I think that looks pretty good. There's definitely a halo right here. We got to fix that. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to try to find one of these that has enough separation to where I can, let's see if I can do it with this one. So right now I'm going to try to get that sky bright white. I'm going to try to get that rock to be dark. It's going to be a little difficult, I think. Okay, that's close. Basically, I'm just manipulating this mask. I think that's as close as it's going to get. So let's just do that. Use that mask. Make this smaller. Bring up my opacity by quite a bit. I'm using my mouse at the moment, so. And then paint it with white. Ugh, it's too much. Let's bring this down. I'm just trying to get rid of that halo that's right above there. I think that did it. I think I'm gonna have to use a bigger brush so that I don't give about. I think that's good. I know it's really hard to see on YouTube, probably. A lot of times I can see the halo way better when I zoom out. And it might not be obvious right here, but when I start adding some more contrast and stuff back in Lightroom, it's going to be more obvious. I think that's probably close, and if I need to fix it, I can come back in and do it. There's lots of things I don't do anymore. I mean, definitely when you're learning editing and stuff like that, playing around with things is fun. I definitely did make black and white photos where there was one singular colored element. The problem is, and I don't mean this in a negative way, most of the time executing that, it just looks cheesy, in my opinion, in the sense that if you do it right, there are ways to do it where it can be very artistic and honestly absolutely beautiful, but I really think it comes down to taking a photo that's absent of color except for like one particular thing. Maybe there's like a maple leaf that's red and the rest of the image is pretty gray, and just doing it all basically in camera can really work. But there's I mean, there's so much stuff that I don't do anymore. I used to, excuse me. I used to shoot a lot of people. I don't shoot people anymore. I mean, the list is very long in terms of the last 10 years of shooting. Hey, Eli, how's it going? Chris, no, I did not. I'm using a 5-stop Indy, to my knowledge, if I remember correctly, for these, so that I could get the shutter speed long enough to about half a second to get this movement in the water. These images will actually be in the next video, I believe. Okay, did I save this? Well, let's save it again. Now, I could continue developing this more in Photoshop, creating more light and stuff, but I really think just adding some contrast in Lightroom is going to be enough. So one thing I already know I want to do is use the dehaze. See, this is what's going to happen. You can see, if I boost this dehaze, you can see that halo right there. Obviously, I'm not going to use this much dehaze, but you can see it right there. That's what I did. And it's really hard to see in the flatter image, but I knew when I came in here and added things, it might be easier to see, which is exactly what happened. But that's okay. I'm not going to add that much in. Something along these lines is probably good. Now, here's an interesting thing, is that I don't want clarity in the rest of the image, but I want clarity, a little bit of clarity on the ice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a radial mask, and we're going to edit the image. Actually, let's do it this way. No, let's do it this way. And we're actually going to bring the whites up. Before we do that, I'm actually going to darken the image just a little bit. Then I'm going to bring the whites up. And I'm going to bring the clarity up. And it should only affect mostly the piece of ice. What's really cool is these pieces of ice are actually up to 1,000 years old. It's really interesting that that ice that comes down there can be up to 1,000 years old. It's pretty cool. Cool, man. What are you editing? Okay. So the image looks okay, but I hit this little bright spot on the horizon is going to bother me, and I'm going to have to go fix that. Is there anything else I want to do with this mask? No, I don't think so. Decrease this. Music's so loud I can't think. Like I said, it's always interesting to see what the white balance auto does after you've edited. I already know that this image is very blue, but that's because the ice is very blue. So that makes sense. Let's see. Did I remove sharpening on these? Yes, I did. Okay. So we're going to add our sharpening back in. I want to bring the whites up of the whole image. These should be a little brighter. I think I need to fix that in Photoshop. Bring the shadows up a little bit to combat that contrast I added in. I absolutely hate this halo that's happening here. It's all I can see at the moment. So let's go try to fix that. It's so weird because you obviously can't see it here all that much, but let's just try to fix that. Let's see, how did I blend this? Okay. All right. I'm just actually going to come in here with a white brush with very low opacity and just work on fixing that. I'm just going to go right over the ice and fix the ice separately. That halo was bothering me quite a bit. So I'm just going to paint on the horizon here to fix that. That's pretty much where it only spot it is. The other thing I have to keep in mind is that the way this ice reflects light is the brightest parts of the ice are actually where you can see through to where the water is moving, and that this dark spot at the top is natural because there is no, it's just going through to the sky. And that's why this spot is darker and this spot is darker at the top of the ice. So maybe it being darker like that is a natural thing and I don't need to worry about it nearly as much. So I think that should fix that issue. And then the other thing I wanted to do was just very gently brighten up these dark areas down here. That's probably enough. And then I'm also going to, oh, that's good. Actually, let's create a curves layer. I want to brighten those pieces of water down there in Photoshop here. Invert my mask. Come in here. It's either Brights 1 or Brights 2. Yeah, let's do Brights 2. It's very low selection though, so I'm going to use a very high opacity. And paint in these little spots right here to be a little bit brighter. There we go. Brightening this dark spot of the ice, make it glow a little bit more. Yeah, looks good. Okay, gonna hit save, go back in Lightroom. Hey, thanks Lillian. Hope you're doing well. Okay. Back in Lightroom. Go back to our edit. So this is pretty close. I think my main concern is just this darkening that's happening here at the top of the piece of ice. And that I probably need to figure out what I want to do. Right here is just really bothering me, which is kind of what I was saying when I was trying to blend the sky with this part. And even though it's kind of natural, where it just gets darker and darker as it comes from this piece of light up, I feel like this is too dark. And that could be just a little bit brighter. But that's something I will probably do off stream. I think this is pretty close to the final edit, if I had to guess. Although, maybe the sky could be a little brighter. Maybe just a touch. So let's do that. Just going to do a select sky. I don't mind that it's dark and gray. That part is fine. But I kind of want it to just be a little bit brighter. That's good. I like that a lot better. We're actually clipping here. So, you know, I don't know if I'd care that much about that. I can come in here and bring this mask down. Could technically bring down the whites. Okay, that fixed the clipping. Those little spots I'm fine with the clip. Those big spots, maybe that was too much, but Okay. I think that's it. I don't think there's much of a crop on this. If I remove some of the sky, remove some of the bottom, it looks okay. I kind of like all of the room here though. Something like that probably. That's it. So this was the edit that I did just in Lightroom. Was something like this. What's really cool is I could technically just take this part of the image in and just use. So I could take this image into the edit that I just did and blend in just the water here if I wanted to use a different version of the water. I will say I like the blueness of this particular edit more. And this is just a little too bright, probably. Yeah, I think it's too bright. I haven't brought the clarity down on the whole image. But this is, again, one of those things where what I'll do is this will be the edit, and then I'll come back to it later and try to decide what needs to be changed, if anything. And I'll look at some of my edits that I did a few weeks ago or when I was in Iceland. Because a lot of the times what'll happen is I'll do an edit or I'll do something and do it that way. And then I'll come back to it and be like, oh, I really like this part of it, but I didn't like this part of it. So like looking at these that I did just in Lightroom, I like the way this blue glow is happening. And I don't like how it's kind of removed here. Like I don't. So technically I could just do this and that would probably add a little bit of that blue glow back in. But I already did that when I had these. So I'll have to figure out what I want to do. I think somewhere in between is probably where I want it. Like this is probably too blue, but this is too clear, I think. So, okay. Any reason I use curves? No, it's honestly pretty much exactly the same. So I could technically dodge and burn. The biggest reason to use curves for me is that, so like let's say I came in here and I actually used the dodge and burn tool. That's going to affect the actual layer. Whereas this, I could come through and brighten up the spots that I've already hit, right? So I now have control over that entire layer. As you can tell, I can move this. I can, like let's say it's too bright. Now, you could technically do the exact same thing with creating a layer to dodge and burn on and then change the opacity of the dodge and burn layer. But realistically, it's all the same thing. There's 10 different ways you can brighten and darken exposures and blend them together. You can use dodge and burn. You can stamp a new layer and then brighten that layer using camera raw and then blend that layer with the layers that are below it. You can use curves. You can use levels. Curves is just what I use the most, mostly just because it tends to, for me, it tends to be the easiest and it has the easiest ability to change certain things. Because the other thing is you can get really technical. Like I could come in here and bring up the highlights and bring down the shadows and start adding contrast into a layer that I just painted in like that. And there's just a lot you can do with curves specifically, and it's just what I'm used to be honest. But if you use dodge and burn and you can blend it that way, there's really no difference. Yeah. I just didn't ever use dodge and burn because for the longest time I used it in a destructive way where my dodge and burning would be permanent and I couldn't go back through and change it. And I really like the ability to mask out things and use the mask as my brightening and darkening layer. Again, technically you could just mask that layer. This just makes more sense to me. Thanks, Lillian. I hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a good day. Happy birthday. A late birthday. Although I already told you happy birthday, but. Okay. I think this image is close to done. Just like the last one, I definitely need some fresh eyes on it. I think one of my favorite images from this day is probably this one. But I don't even think I need to take this into Photoshop. I think this image is already done. It's really interesting talking about black and white because when I first see this image, I think it's black and white, right? Like you think it's basically absence of color. But if I make it black and white, you notice how much color is actually in the image. But there's just this particular image I really like. This one and this one both have some elements in it that are just, there's just something about them. But I don't think I need to do anything else really to this image. This is one I'm sitting on mostly to make sure my eyes are correct and that everything about it is where I want it to be. But yeah. So there are a few more. Like I said, I want to take, we can take this one and I want to add in the swirls of the water from this one and blend those together. So we should do that. I'm not entirely sure or if I will actually end up using this particular image, but yeah, let's work on that. So I'm going to close out of this other one. Did I not save? Whatever, I'll save. Thanks for joining in, everyone. Oh, that's right. I was just closing that out. Okay. I move this out of the way again. All right. So what we're going to do is, because this is nice and blurred, but I like the swirl of this particular image better than the swirl in this one. We're going to take and blend them together and make it one. So the biggest thing I want to do is do my edits, but mostly just get the color right and get the white balance right and add some stuff in here and there and then go about it that way. Whew, that makes it really blue. That's okay. I think I'm gonna, it was really blue to be honest. Warm it up just a little bit. I'm also going to bring down some of the blue saturation. Bring our sharpening down. I'm going to add that back in later. And I think we can probably brighten this up a little bit. Maybe not that bright. Cool. Don't have to do much more for the preliminary. Take it, excuse me, before we go into Photoshop. I'm going to paste those settings there. And we're going to, whoops, not what I wanted. Open as layers Photoshop. This should be a pretty easy blend here. I think all I have to do is bring this up, mask, 100% opacity, paint with black right here, and decide where I want it to be. I think I just want the whole thing, the whole bottom half here. Really like this stuff better here too, so maybe I also just paint that in. I gotta be careful though, because if I get too close to the rock too much, it's gonna start looking blurry. Yeah. Might not be worth the trouble. Let's see, where does it start to get blurry here? Okay, it's blurry throughout the whole thing, so. Okay. I think what I'm going to do, I think this is all blurry though, so I think just that is probably good. Let's make sure we didn't blend too much of that rock. I think this bottom half is, oh yeah, we can get way more. Okay, hold on. Let's see here. Just need to make sure that the rock is the rock from this image, and then I'm going to come in with a smaller brush, less opacity, and just, you know what? Actually, I think that honestly just looks pretty good. Nope, that doesn't make sense. In terms of the actual water. Something like that doesn't look bad though. I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to lighten this a bit. That's too much. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Anything else I want to take? Man, I wish this didn't end up blurry because I really like the way the light is in the ice there. I'm kind of looking at these here, but I think they're just too blurry to use. No, we're just going to go with this. I think that's it. Okay. So I'm going to group these two together. And how do we want to do this? Do I want to blend it in here? Do I even care to blend it? Luminosity mask, rather? Yeah, let's do it in here. Shouldn't be too hard. Gonna darken the whole image. And again, this is just dodging and burning in a different way, pretty much. Turn that off. Go on my masks here. Probably do brights 2 first. Yeah, we'll start there. Not even going to use my tablet here. I'm just going to paint in kind of in the motion of the light here. I definitely need to brighten up the piece of ice though, for sure. Definitely need to brighten this section up some. That's what I've done so far. Little touches of brightness there. Definitely need to bring up this though. Let's just bring up our opacity a bit. Try to get this looking a little bit brighter. I'm actually going to brighten up everything up here. It's looking decent. Okay. Then we're going to deselect that, turn that back off and do brights 1, and then get a little bit more specific with what we're going to touch here. So I know that I want to brighten up this little section a little bit more. So I'm just going to hit that a couple times. I definitely know I want to hit the ice a little bit more. So again, I'm just doing some pretty big strokes here to kind of just brighten up this. I think that's looking pretty good. This still needs to be brighter. I think I'm going to have to actually use a curve that brightens that up though. So deselect that. I think that's got everything looking pretty good. This might be a bit too dark, but I can worry about that later. Let's do another curves, but use it to brighten everything. So basically, I'm just using these two curves adjustments to kind of do a pseudo luminosity mask. Well, not pseudo, but it's an actual luminosity mask, but to brighten and darken the exposure where I want it to be bright and dark. Okay. I'm going to turn that off. Again, probably do masks 2 or brights 2. Nope, got to do brights. Nope, that's not the right one. Got to do brights 1. Okay. Make that selection. Turn this back on. And I think we're going to have to bring down our opacity here. And then I want to hit this little spot. Wait, something is not right. I didn't invert this, did I? Okay, I got to deselect. Invert this. Okay. I was like, something is not right about this. Okay. Now I can paint in some brightness. Hit that spot right there. Trying to get that a little bit brighter. And we definitely want to brighten up our piece of ice here. I actually think I'm fine just brightening the sky because I can bring that down pretty easily with the sky separation tool in Lightroom. So I'm not too concerned about over brightening the sky. A little highlights adjustment in Lightroom will fix that really quick considering how dull and gray it is already. That might be too much. So let's tone it back a little bit here. I think that's pretty good. One final thing is I'm going to brighten up this dark area right here, because I know that that's going to get much darker once I add some contrast in. So, yeah, let's take it into Lightroom. I already know I'm going to add a radial filter to that piece of ice. And what that's going to do is, so instead of me having to sit there and articulately select out the piece of ice to get it a little bit brighter than everything else, I'm just going to, it's a very, you could say it's lazy, but considering this photo, it's going to be so subtle that you're really not going to be able to tell all that much. But it's going to save me a lot of work by not having to go in and select just the rock to brighten up by itself. And it's going to look a little more natural quickly, which is nice. So what I'm talking about is, well, first of all, let's go medium for now. Bring up the shadows just a tad. I'm going to bring up the whites of the whole image. Nope, not going to do that yet. Okay, let's add that radial filter in like I was saying. So this is what I'm going to do here. And then all I'm going to do is bring up just the whites of that a little bit. And I definitely know I want to bring up some dehaze. It's really going to add a lot of nice micro contrast in and kind of darken up some of the spots that I want to be darker. I'm just kind of looking at how textured the ice is becoming though. Then we're going to add a sky selection mask. I'm going to just bring down the, the highlights of that by a little bit. And I can balance this a little bit later. I am paying attention to these waves back here that are actually kind of bright. So it's entirely possible I should actually use, that's not what I want, a graduated filter. So I pressed M to bring that up and bring down the highlights that way. But see how it hits the rock and kind of affects that a little bit too much. So I got to be subtle about it. I actually don't like that. So I think I'm just going to leave it for now. Might be something so what I can easily do is come back in here in Photoshop. And is this the one brightening everything? Yeah. So what I can do is come in here, select maybe Brights 2. That looks like a great selection. And zoom in. Come in here. Make my brush a little bit smaller. And then just bring up my opacity to 100. Paint in where those waves are. Now, I don't think that's going to halo. So I'm going to come in here, brighten it back up just a little bit. Because those were a little bit too bright. Hit save and then see what happens. All right. Back in the Lightroom. Make sure my thing is there. Nice. Yeah, that looks a little bit better, I think. Okay. So where was I? Go into this Radial Mask. White's already good. I've already added dehaze. Let's take away some of the clarity in the image. Just a little bit though. And then I'm going to add some of that back into the rock with this selection. And turn on my music, you know. So I'm actually going to bring down the highlights in the rock. I keep saying rock, ice, but it is basically the size of a rock. And then I'm going to bring up the whites. And that's basically going to stretch out. What that's going to do is just add a little bit more contrast to the piece of ice. And I think that's looking pretty good. Let's bring up the shadows a little bit too. A little bit. I think that's looking pretty good. I'm going to remove some of the saturation in the image. But what I'm going to do is come down here and make it a little more blue again to kind of get that ice to pop. No, I'm not in love with that. I'm not going to do that actually. Besides our sharpening back end. Normally this is the last step, but I think we're almost getting pretty close to almost done with the image. I think this is pretty close. So this is one I could actually see being in black and white. I don't think the color is adding a whole lot. And like if I tried to fix, so for example, if I tried to color balance to this is what it looks like. And I'm just not in love with that. It feels too void of color because this looks more green now. And I just think that, I mean, it was really gray and blue, to be honest. But maybe we can just a little bit here. I'm actually going to go back into my sky mask, make that a little bit warmer as well. I think that's probably a nice medium there. That also probably means I can add some back in here. And I think a nice little vignette here might be nice. So what I'm going to do is I usually boost this up so I can get an idea of where my feather is. I usually like a nice big feather. Like that. I don't use vignettes very much, but I think in this particular image, that's probably too strong. It might work pretty well. Something like that. You know what? No, I don't like it. I don't like it in the sky. Let's do our own. We're just going to make our own rather than having it be. So I'm going to keep a lot of the sky in. I'm going to invert this, and then all we're going to do is bring down our exposure and try to keep some of that sky in a little bit more. Something like this, I think. Super subtle. Yeah. I think that's pretty close to done. I think there's some things I could do to probably make it look a little bit better. But I'll have to come back to it. I think actually strong contrast looks a little bit better, but I got to bring up the shadows to combat. Yeah. Yeah. It's looking pretty good. Hey, thanks for joining us, Stu. Have a good night, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for joining. Okay. I think that's looking pretty good. So what we did there was we took this particular image, but we used the swirly part from this particular image to make this one. I think it gave us a nice effect. And the reason we had to do that is because, so I was actually, if you saw me shooting these photos, it very much involves sitting and waiting for the waves to come up far enough, but then sometimes the waves come up too much and you just have to run away. So I'm literally just holding my shutter down as long as I possibly can before getting soaked, and then just pulling my camera up immediately and running away. Which is why a lot of my images Let's see if I could find some. A lot of my images look like this. So I'd be waiting. The water would come. The water would be there. And then it was time to run away. And I'm just holding down my shutter button, especially for some of these earlier images. But it's pretty comical watching. Yeah. Some really nice pieces of ice that day. Because I went to the Diamond Beach twice. 2 or 3 times. Yeah, that was a runaway shot. And the first couple times, the pieces of ice on the beach just weren't very clear. They just were very, I don't know how to say it. Porous, oxidized, whatever you want to say. But this day, they were really nice. And I think I came away with some pretty good pieces of ice, pretty good images. I can actually show you 2 days prior, I think was here. Let's see. I can show you some pieces of ice. There was more sun, so it wasn't as gray, but I came away with this one, which I'm not entirely sure is done. This one's pretty sweet. I think I'm almost done with this one. Not entirely sure I want it to be that dark, but yeah. A lot of the pieces of ice were just less crystally and more oxidized. I don't know what you want to call it. But this day, everything was just so blue. Looked really cool. Like this one looks like an egg. You can actually see my ND colorization in this one a bit. On this right-hand side, you can kind of tell it's purple. That was because, so I was using my video NDs instead of my square NDs that are for photography. Not a huge difference in terms of their purpose. One is just easier for me to add and remove. And so that was what I was using. Anyways, I think I'm going to end the stream there. I'm going to hang out for a little bit. If you guys have any questions about any of the particular images I edited or just in photography in general, I think thanks for joining. Thanks for hanging out. I'm about at the almost at the 2-hour mark, so I'll give it another 10 minutes. Maybe we'll fool around with another image here. You know what? Let's actually go back with some fresh eyes on our first edit here and see what it looks like now that our eyes have adjusted. Where is it? Here it is. Yeah. See, the first time I see this, I think it looks better than it did last time I saw it. So that's good. But I don't know. Maybe I just needed more in the sky. Maybe some more dynamic light to really make this go from an okay image to like a great image. I think compositionally, I honestly think the strongest thing about this image is the composition. Like I said, I barely have to crop it, and everything is balanced really well, I think. I just think the moment could have been better. But I do like it much better than I did when we finished editing it. So let's see, are there any quick images? One that I'm really excited to edit is that I haven't gotten to yet. It's going to be this shot. This one's, I think, going to be portfolio worthy. Composition's great. The water's great. The location's great. The sky has enough in it to be good enough. Pretty excited about this one, but I will probably save that for another stream. Let's see. I think this was the stream thumbnail. We could work on this for a little bit. I actually think this one is going to end up in black and white. I reset this. What's weird about it, though, is that is not the right color balance. I think, did I overexpose? There's just something really strange about the highlights in this image. Like there's not data there or something. It's just, I can't. Oh, actually, I think I do know what it is. I shot this at f/22, and I think that's why there's something strange about the sharpness of the image. Because once you go past f/16 on most lenses, they actually lose a little bit of quality. But the reason I was shooting f/16 was to get the longest shutter speed I could. So But I think this was going to end up in black and white. I'm just not entirely sure how I end up doing the crop. So obviously I need to crop out. Oop, that is not what I wanted to do. The right-hand side. And I want this line to come in basically at the corner. But then I have to decide how much I crop out of the top. And, you know, maybe something like this is the image. And I got to decide how much breadth, like how much room that top part needs. Obviously something like this is just too much. I haven't really decided yet. I think something like this might be good. But it also feels weird because this reflection seems brighter than the actual mountains. But it's not in this part. I guess that's probably because I used a... What did I do here? Yeah. It is because I removed basically all the highlights here. And I think that's something I'm going to have to fix. The problem is, if I want to remove the highlights of the whole image, I want this bright part of the wave here. So I actually think what I'm going to end up having to do, I think I'm going to have to take this into Photoshop and do it that way. So, and I got to remove this person. Well, let's do it. Might as well. If you're still here, I guess I'm not ending yet, but this will be the last image I work on. So let's work on it. I'm not too concerned about black and white yet. Let's go back to where I actually had it because I at least have some semblance of... I'm actually going to leave it at this color balance because I know that I'm going to want to convert it to black and white, even though the color is definitely off. Let's go in here and check out our masks and what I've done. Because what I think I'm going to do... Yeah. What I think I'm going to do is just darken this to where the mountains look right. Probably close to this. Remove all of this stuff. That's fine. I murdered the sharpening on this to try to fix that blurriness issue. Now we can move with some of this. Again, I'm not worried about the color balance because I know I'm going to want to convert it to black and white. You know, I should probably use the correct color balance, though, for the blend. That's too much, though. In case I decide not to do black and white. So this is our bright... I think I just overexposed this image, to be honest. But man, that is blurry. When I looked at all the other ones, I think they're just like that because it's at f/22. Unless I would like, it's also entirely possible. So I think at this moment, I wasn't at my camera. I set up my camera to just take continuous shots while I was letting the waves come in. I actually like this shot a lot because of this reflection here. Maybe that's the shot we edit. And so I was just leaving my camera taking photos, but it's very likely that you can tell there's some micro movements that as the wave was coming in, it's what moved my camera, and that maybe that's what's making it blurry. But I really do think it's part of it being at f/22. So well, let's do this edit. So this is going to be our dark exposure to get... And then just going to create a virtual copy and do a bright exposure where I do not care too much about. I think something like that's going to be good. Okay. This should be quick and easy. Hey, Dennis, how's it going? I'm not sure which clouds you're talking about. Maybe these, maybe on a different photo. I didn't catch when you said that. All right, so we are just going to paint in the spots that we want bright. Should be pretty easy, I think. Should be able to use mask 1 here. And then just probably a big brush here. This should be a little brighter. And it should be pretty easy, like I said. And I'm going to paint in a little bit of the darks. Remember, we're probably converting this to black and white. So definitely want some of the brighter parts down here. Maybe if I go in here and select this mask on maybe a 2. Nope. Maybe a 1. Sure, let's try that. Turn this back on. Maybe we can paint in some of those little spots right there. I really want that line to be the brightest part. And this little spot should be bright too, because of that reflection. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Maybe this reflection is a little bit too hot. Let's bring that down a little bit. Yep, okay. And then the only other thing I really... Nope, I don't think I need to do anything else. Wait, did I bring this in cropped? Ah, shoot. Okay, we got to do this again because I don't want it to be cropped in case I recrop this. So we're going to hit reset. Sometimes that happens. Hopefully everyone's left by now and did see. Nope, we still have. Okay. Well, what can you do? I was like, wait a second. This image is cropped. So the reason I do that is because even though this is probably the crop that I end up with, sometimes you have to add little bits. Like I might need to add a little bit more sky to print at exactly, let's say 4x5. And basically locking myself into this particular composition rather than having all the data when I take it into Photoshop and then bring it back is not what I want to be doing. I want to have that there if I can. So although this only took a couple minutes, so it's not a big deal. Oh, I can't actually do that. Okay. So we're just going to reopen it with the corrected images and just do exactly what we just did. Sometimes mistakes like that happen. I make mistakes all the time, as you can tell. Okay. Let's do that again. Add a mask. Come in here. Do brights 1 for this particular image. Make it about 30%. And paint in again. Mostly focusing on this line here at first, and then paint in a little bit more of this section. Brighten that up. Not that section. That's too much over there. That's probably a little too much there. And then that's pretty much it, I think. No, it needs to be a little bit brighter on the line here. I think that's pretty good. I think it's a little too much right here. So let's darken that. Yeah. Looks good. Okay. Now I can hit save. Wasn't too hard to fix. Go back in here. Now we can crop it to where I know I'm going to remove this. This is going to come up just a little bit. And then I'm probably going to bring this down. And let's convert it to black and white. And then I'm going to make it bluer. Oh, not going to make it bluer. Let's do this first. That's going to give me more separation of the sky. I'm going to make it bluer here. Bring down my highlights overall. And then I'm going to bring down the blues. And so you may have noticed how blue the sky got when I added this blue saturation and color tempt it more blue. By making the color temp more blue there, it basically just gives me more separation between the mountains and the sky in the background, so that when I come in here and go to black and white and I bring down the blue, I have way more control there. So what you will notice is that it is removing the blue here. So we don't want that. So that is a problem. And sadly, I don't think there's not a way to HSL with a mask, which I wish there was. Like, I wish I could use this mask to intersect with I could do a color range. Could do it that way. It's just different. Yeah, it's also getting part of the clouds. Okay, let's try doing this. Let's make a color range mask. Select blue, but then I want to intersect this mask with a linear gradient, and I only want it to affect this. Did I get that right? Yeah. Okay. Then I bring down the highlights. Okay, that doesn't look terrible. So the other thing that I can do, I'm trying to pay attention to this too, it's kind of messing with something there. Is that. Okay, that's at least a start. Then I can come in here and then darken up the blues a little bit. Then what I want to do is definitely add a mask down here that brings back that brightness in those waves. Like, really brings it back. But I also want to intersect that with a color range mask. And I want to pick the waves so that it's not hitting the mountains. Perfect. Cool. So it should now only be affecting the parts. Yep. It's only affecting, because I don't want it to brighten up this mountain part, because that's just going to get too bright for as bright as I want these waves to be, or lines of the waves. I think that's looking pretty good. I'm a little concerned with this part, but I think I can fix that. And then I think I want to subtract with a brush, but only half flow this little area over here. Like that. Yep, perfect. All right, well, that worked. Okay, I think this is almost done. I don't like how there's not any. I want these bright spots here, so it's not so dark on the bottom here. So I think what I'm going to do is deselect my mask here and just paint in basically that entire bottom half here. Maybe not that much. Let's do 76. I need something there. Otherwise, it's just black and dark down there, which I don't want. Let's hit save. That should fix this issue of this just being black with this white line here a little bit, I think. Let's see if the mask updates with that new white spot. Did it? Let's find out. Color range, let's add this in. No, that's too much. Trying to get this part in. That's too much though. Okay, I think this is better though, for sure. I definitely want to bring up the whites even more. Bring down the image a little bit more. I'm looking at these mountains right here. That's really what I'm trying to get correct. Okay. I think this is pretty close. We haven't even added contrast in yet, which is kind of crazy. Probably means I don't need to do that. I think we're going to use one more mask here for the highlights on these mountains. Actually, I can color range this so I can intersect with a color range, select the color of the mountains, bring the exposure down. Oh, that doesn't look right. Bring the highlights down. Something like that. Gonna bump my clarity up because it's a black and white. Whew, that color version. Nice. These still just look too hot. I can't get them to come down right where I want them. Just come down a little bit. Okay. I think that's probably pretty close. I think this is getting there. Yep, I think that's close to done. Maybe I'm not in love with the crop. Maybe right here would be better. No, it's got to be on the edge. But maybe we do the same thing or similar things to this image where it's coming up right here and take a look at that at some point. I think it needs more here. Yeah, I think that's it. All right. I think that is it for the stream, guys. Thanks for hanging out. And there's not many of you left, but I appreciate you joining, tuning in. And obviously this video will be on YouTube. You can watch it anytime if you want to go back and watch what I did, what I talked about. But I appreciate you guys all coming. You can let me know what you think about the images. Feel free. Hope everyone has a good Monday. I'm going to try to stream again this week. Maybe Thursday. Might be good. I might schedule it right after this, actually. So, thanks, Tim. Have a good one. All right. Of course. Later, Tim. And anyone else that's still here, have a good one.